Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please download future episodes on iTunes. But today we are talking to Dr Glenn Wallis, who develops leaders for improved results. Welcome, Glenn.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me onto the show, Judith. That's great.
So can you tell me, how do you do that? How do you develop leaders?
Basically, my role is as a principal consultant in my consultancy, and we work with leaders on a one-to-one basis as an executive coaching arrangement usually, but also we develop coaches in terms of if a large organisation wants leadership development programs, we can go in and work with them to develop broader groups of leaders. And we've also got some sort of IT tech solutions to assist that too, so some apps. And we're moving into the whole artificial intelligence space too. So we're trying to democratise that sort of leadership development piece and get as many people access to really good quality leadership development as we can.
Now that is interesting. Something that piqued my interest is when you said artificial intelligence. How is that going to work?
Early days for us, at least. I know that artificial intelligence is well on in other parts of the world, but I think the view that I've taken with a group of colleagues from a range of different environments, has to be said, is that if artificial intelligence will be used ultimately and virtual reality for learning and development context, why would we not be early into that? And so we're trying to develop artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions that will allow a greater number of people to access a coach, or at least a coaching type solution. And it's not without its challenges. So I'm not naive to the fact that this is likely to be quite a long process. But I think if it's going to come, then we would like to be at the forefront of shaping that.
Well, that is very maverick-like, to actually turn around and think coaching can be delivered by a machine. That's very interesting. I mean, I've defined mavericks as willfully independent people. Would you describe yourself as one? I certainly would now. I think I might have previously described myself as socially awkward and independent through social awkwardness as much as anything else. But I think I've learned, and I think one of the things that reading your work and the last conversations that we've had, it seems to be that mavericks learn how to adjust socially. And so I would say that certainly over the years as I've got older and used perhaps more of a reflective approach to how I interact with people, that's been learned. Certainly that willfully independent piece, I've tempered that, let's say, so that it fits more with kind of social settings and organizational settings. Yeah, that's a good one. I always say that I'm naturally tactless, but have learned to be tactful over the years. Does that ring true for you?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting one. I would describe myself as a very awkward teenager and quite a loner, actually, to some extent. And I think when you're a teenager, it kind of all feels a bit awkward and different. But I'm sure other people have felt this way too. You sort of feel a bit different from everybody else. And I think some people assimilate those differences more readily, perhaps, than others. And I don't know about you, but I found that quite a difficult process. Still occasionally find myself in situations where I probably haven't quite flexed the way I want to be. But I think there is some value to be had for people who remain outside of the bell curve of normal, I guess. And actually there's a real delight to be had and some value to be had for bringing a different perspective and being willingly different or willingly independent.
It's interesting. I love the outside the normal bell curve. I like that. I like that.
So that would be your experience too, though. True? Would that sort of echo some of your experiences?
Yeah, I think with me, I always think that everybody has a driving question that drives them. Mine, it comes from childhood, and mine has always been
why do people do that? So I've always been a little bit on the outside, just analysing people.
Yeah. That's really an interesting outside. Yeah, that outside piece is, and I wonder whether we put ourselves there voluntarily, as much as anything. And I don't know that anybody put me there. I kind of put myself there, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice to see where everybody else stands. So in terms of Mavericks, I know that last time we spoke, we had lots of questions. Do you have any additional questions that you may want to ask?
Yeah, I'd like to. I would like to pursue it because I'm interested in this natural versus the sort of nature-nurture piece. So I'd love to get your sense on, to what extent do you think Mavericks are born? Do you learn it, and what might the influences be of that enable somebody to learn to be a Maverick? So I'd be genuinely interested in your feedback and your insight into that piece.
Right, my view is that when we're born, we are people pleasers, because if we didn't please our parents, they wouldn't feed us, and we would die. So so from an early age we learn we have to do we learn how we have to do stuff. But then I think what happens with Mavericks is that they learn to protect themselves. Something happens that they need to protect themselves, and they need to do something where other people's opinions are important. So it might be they have to raise a younger sibling. It might be they need to go out and look after the adult. They tend to have leadership experiences very, very early. I think from what I've looked at, I think that the personality components that drive leadership tend to be genetic, but they're switched on through environment. So I think that Mavericks themselves, whether you're a socialized Maverick or an extreme Maverick, that's inherent in your personality. But the environment that you have been in has enhanced that, amplified that. And I think in terms of, can you learn to be a Maverick? Well, you can't learn to have a Maverick personality, but a conformist can become a Maverick behaviorist, which means that they borrow the traits of a socialized Maverick in an area where they want their most success, which generally is work, or it could be, a sport. So I think in that respect, you can teach people how to take the success, how to be successful based on a socialized Maverick strategy, but they're not going to be something that they can retain or keep going throughout the whole other part of their life. So, for example, in my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders, it goes through the different strategies, mindsets, how they utilize power that Mavericks use. And I think people can follow that. But I'd be wrong to even try to suggest they will become Mavericks, because they can't sustain, a conformist can't sustain that outside of that one area.
Right. And would that be one of the indicators that somebody's not a sort of a born Maverick, that actually it's about the sustainability of those behaviours in sort of a wider range of contexts, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because when you see somebody in an area where they're succeeding, it can be very difficult to tell. Are they a Maverick behaviourist, or are they a socialised Maverick? It isn't until you take them out that environment and then see what they do. So if they can, when they go home and see their partners, they continue to act in that way, then you know that they're a true Maverick. If they go home and say, "Yes, dear, what is it that you want? Yes, we'll go out." Then you go, "Okay." No.
Right. Yeah. So they're able to bring those behaviours to certain contexts and sort of potentially display those or manifest those pretty consistently, but in either in different settings where they don't need to be, or there's not requirement for them to be, then not so much, and that inconsistency might suggest they're a behaviourist rather than sort of socialised Maverick.
Yeah, and I think it's
okay.
Kind of Mavericks tend to not conform everywhere unless there's a good reason to. Whereas Maverick behaviourist is always looking to conform unless there's a good reason to. So it's a flip.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess if I'm a conformist, which I'm trying desperately to put do my empathy piece and leap towards what it must be like to be a conformist. Yeah. How would you help me become a Maverick, behaviourist, and at least display some of the best elements of being a Maverick?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I think there's about 55% of the population is, and most of that population is, they do not want to change. So I think for a conformist to want to take the risk in an area, there has to be a compelling reason. I think if there is a compelling reason, like they concern the redundancy, or they really, really want to, then it's a case of it's not intuitive for a conformist mapping out what they need to do and where. So take risk wouldn't be normal. So you would have to start off with something quite simple. And I think for me, that would be an understanding. So, for example, when I used to work in corporate life, sometimes I had to develop graduates or first managers. And what people would normally do is give them a load of leadership theory to learn and understand. And they thought you're a leader, or put them on a traditional leadership.
Right.
Whereas what I would do I would explain to them what leadership was. You need to know the things around leadership. The techniques are easy. So I would say, find out how people are persuaded. What does influence mean? Look at room mechanics, look at body language, look at, so I would get them to have a base knowledge of the areas around leadership, how people interact with that, before I would actually take leadership theory, because leadership theory needs to be hinged on. So I think I would take it that way. I would go through, because I think the conformist is not early adopter, so they won't take that leap of faith. So you'd have to provide reason around it before they're willing to take the risk. Good question.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about so if we take the sort of mirror image of that and say, what about a maverick that is, disruptive and, is an extreme, to use your language, a kind of extreme maverick and is being disruptive, personally and potentially to their own lives, including or outside of work. How would you help that person moderate and modify the way that they are in order that they are able to add greater value or be able to sort of contribute more to life in general and be less disruptive? If I've interpreted some of the downsides of being an extreme maverick correctly, I guess. So it might be useful to understand from you what those are first and then how you might help somebody adjust.
Funny enough, it's a lot easier to make an extreme maverick less extreme than it is to make a conformist more maverick.
Okay. Right.
And that's because the extreme maverick is motivated by self-interest.
Right. Right. Okay.
In a much bigger degree. So, and quite often I have been asked to come in, and there's one corporate called it Save the Maverick, and that person was extremely good at what they were doing.
Right.
But so the business loved them, HR hated them because there was a list of crying people, and all sorts of projects failing because they've been manipulating people, sorts of things. So HR wanted them to be sacked because of all the litigation issues, and the business were like, they're the people that are bringing in the most money. They're not. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's this compelling reason. Now, extreme mavericks know how to manipulate. They only do things that they respect. So if you want to move them, you need to be someone that they see as either equal intelligence or more intelligent, and they have respect for what you do. But you also have to have authority, and authority isn't something that someone gives you, it's authority that. So one of the first things I always do is speak to the organisation and say, how far will you go with this? And unless they're prepared to sack them, I'm not saying they should sack them, but unless they're prepared to sack them, you'll never move that individual.
Right.
So if they say, yes, if nothing happens, we will sack them. And sometimes for some organisations, it's really hard to even get to that point. But if they say, yes, we would sack them, then that allows me, that I know now I'll be able. So what I will do is find out, first of all, from that extreme maverick, what it is that they want to achieve. Because the thing with extreme mavericks, that they need something to bounce back against. And quite often people get really frightened of mavericks, so they don't give them any boundaries or any structure. So the maverick gets frustrated and they keep pushing. So I find out what it is that they want, and then I'll demonstrate how to get there. So for example, there was this guy I was working with, and he wanted to be promoted, but he couldn't get on. He was, the guy's stupid. I know more than him. I bring money under this. So I said, look, if you want to do this, so I got him to tell me about the director, and we did a method. We planned out what he'd do to be able to persuade the director that he was good at what he did. And we did all this thing, and then it went really, really well. And the extreme maverick said to me, gosh, you are so sneaky. What do you mean? He goes, I have completely changed who I am to get what I want. And I said, but is it effective? And he goes, oh yeah, I'm happy with it, but it's really annoying. He goes, if I had said, right, you're going to need to do this, because we talked about language, we talked about how quite often it's contextual, what you need to say, look at this and modify that. But it was all referenced in the, right, if you want him to do this, this is how you make him do that. And it wasn't until afterwards and he started to reflect and he went, gosh, I'm a different person today than I was before. So everybody was happy.
Yeah. Interesting. And so that in that example, you've kind of tapped into the self-interest piece that you spoke about, right? So that actually, that you can afford to give on this in order that your end goal is achieved. So although he might have felt like he'd completely changed his personality, actually what you've skillfully done, it sounds like, is tap into what you know of Mavericks as a trait and kind of drag that in to help him. In effect, you've leveraged a strength in order to combat a potential weakness.
Yeah, good way of putting it. Because I think, if I had done what his HR team had done, which was you're upsetting people, it's costing. His view would be, I don't care. I'm not interested. Yeah. I still get what I want.
Yeah.
But if it's like you do know if you carry on the way you're going to go, they're going to say and actually explain. And I suppose for me having an HR background as well really helps and they see me more of an authority because I understand their personality. And I think being a socialised maverick myself, whilst I'm not extreme, I have been, because all socialised mavericks have flipped through the extreme bit to become socialised mavericks. You can sort of touch point and give examples. Yes, I remember when I was a bit like that.
That's interesting. That might then help me understand some of those behaviours I spoke about at the beginning, about being an awkward teenager and being quite a loner, and some of those things which I would look back on not very proudly and think those sorts of behaviours were perhaps in that extreme space. But what you're saying is that that's quite usual for socialised mavericks to kind of sort of move along and back and along the continuum until they've kind of socialised themselves. Is that kind of an accurate kind of representation of what you've just said?
Yeah, it is, because when I do the Maverick Continuum, people always assume the extreme Maverick is the end point. It's not. The extreme Maverick and then Socialised Maverick furthest point on that journey. And the thing, what happens is, as you grow older, as a Socialised Maverick, so you've not become Socialised, you're just Maverick, and as you're developing, you suddenly realise that you have an extreme Maverick power because you have intuitively and understood and learnt how to begin with manipulate, how to get what you want, what to say, other people's weaknesses, all this sort of stuff that you just pick up and you start to apply them. And the difference between a socialised maverick and extreme maverick is very quickly the socialised maverick realises that what they're doing isn't right. So they have this moral, ethical standpoint and they go, it may be fun to play around a bit here, but it isn't really the right thing to do. So they start to develop out of that. But it does take a while, so it is a journey. And I would say, how socialised the socialised maverick is, by how fast he or she will flip back to extreme maverick.
Right.
If they get upset.
Yeah. I was interesting. I was going to ask you earlier on about the impact of stress. Bearing in mind some of the work environments, but also just human life can be pretty stressful. And what's the impact of stress on the sort of concrete nature of the shift that people have made to socialised maverick versus, slipping out into particularly the extreme maverick case?
And the point, when mavericks, both types of mavericks can handle stress really, really well and take an amazing amount of stress. However, when you get to the point socialised maverick is, actually a good point, I've just suddenly thought about it, is that if it's external stress, socialised maverick will really be alright for a very long time. But if the stress becomes internal, so they're extremely frustrated or things like that, then as a protective method, they will easily flip to extreme. Just because, so I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you want to get something done and in a rush, your natural response is say to someone, just get it done. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to argue about it. Just do it. but then you know that's not the right way. So then you fluff it up a bit, put a bit of love around it, and then but you're laughing because you do this, don't you?
Yeah,
I'm not the only one.
It's email that you don't send. It's email
exactly.
that you write, but you never send just because it makes you feel good that you've written it.
Or you've written the email and then you have to fluff it up afterwards. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you rewrite it and it's kind of like that. Make it. Yeah.
But when you're stressed out or very time poor, you don't bother. And what happens is it really shocks people, especially if you've been a socialist for a very long time. So I think when a socialist maverick is highly, highly stressed, you will see far more bluntness, far less compassion. It's not like they don't feel it themselves. It's just they are unable, because the socialised maverick is a learnt behaviour. It only becomes natural over a period of time. So it's something that is shed fairly easy, especially if you're on your beginning of the path. And I think what people need to realise, and I've said it in the book, is that the nature of the maverick is a walk. And as you walk down that journey of socialisation as a maverick, it appears to others, you become more like a domesticated dog, someone they can understand, predictable. But the nature of the wolf never goes away. And the socialised maverick never changes. It's not like they're trying to lie or hide their nature. It's just they've understood how conformists need to be spoken to get them to do stuff like that. And what happens when stress comes, the wolf comes out, starts howling at the moon, and everyone's like, who let the wolf into the house?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, fascinating stuff. Fascinating.
Cool. I actually think that's a great place to end there. I really like those questions. They're really good. Would you come back another time, Glenn?
I'd be absolutely honoured. It's a fascinating topic, and I'm so glad that we've connected. So I'd be delighted to have an opportunity to sort of further explore. And thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Glenn. Bye-bye.
Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Glenn as much as I enjoyed having it. If you would like to learn more about Mavericks and leadership, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, apply to join the Maverick Paradox exclusive Facebook group. My website is maverickparadox.com. Find out how willful independence can ultimately change all our futures. Thanks again, and see you soon.